Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. I'm going to get started right away, no delay. Want to keep it cute and concise today. Hope you're doing well on this Wednesday, September 20th. Just 2 more days to the fall equinox. I hope you've been continuously compounding your new moon affirmations and proclamations and manifestations. If you remember from, for sure, no, it's upside down. For sure, there's no problem with still maintaining a space of meditation and rest and ease at this time, even though the inner man might be excited to push ahead forward. But if you remember in my moon message back on, I think it was September 13th or 14th, I spoke about how there's some alignments in play right now that may still put a bit of a pause for the cause on your creativity, in the sense of pulling the trigger on something altogether new or forging ahead in a powerful way. But the 22nd is more or less a powerful day that you can look forward to have an extra surge of support for whatever you're manifesting. So, well, that's a lot. Should I take all those? Yeah, I'll take them. Why not? All right. So, to that regard, let's probably stretch it. And no, I'm gonna keep that because that was the first one out by itself. So that's the Four of Swords. Again, it's about being in a space of rest and rejuvenation. I usually, actually, not always, but I usually see it as meditation, prayer, even perhaps enveloped in that state of rest and relaxation. It could absolutely be that. It could be a couple things, but let's see what these cards we're calling out. Okay. Okay, right up under that Four of Swords, because sometimes I usually sense the Four of Swords as a voluntary state of rest. But sometimes it can be circumstantial, where you're so mentally exhausted that you have to sit down somewhere. There's really no other alternative at the time. Given these energies, which we're going to see in a second, I don't know. It might be something like that. Or sometimes it's somebody being laid to rest. It could even be recovery from some illness or ailment. But with the sword energy, it's usually more mental or psychological than physical per se. But you know what? Mental and psychological manifest into the physical, which is definitely this wand energy here with the 10 of Wands and the 7 of Wands. So, and the 2. So we got the 2 of Wands, which is some plan of action or decision, determination. We got the 5 of Cups, which is depression, despair, disappointment, some type of regret, perhaps even. Then we got the 5 of Wands, which is the 5 of Wands, which is the end of a burdensome cycle, or releasing yourself from your burdens in some way, shape, or form. Or it could be being burdened down, because when I'm seeing this 10 to the 7, to me that feels like a regression. That doesn't feel progressive holistically, where you're carrying a heavy load at the 10, which should be the end, but now you're going back to the 7, back to having to defend yourself or stand your ground, or have to be defensive or protective of your own energy for at least some thought or proposed threat is what I feel for this 7, based on this progression here. And then we got the Queen of Pentacles, which I feel a strange vibration from the Queen. The only thing saving it is this temperance card, but there's something in me that feels like he's protective from or of this queen. But the temperance card is the high vibration, that there's some balance and harmony that's being brought into alignment one way or another. So even if you feel, like I said, it's like feeling like there's some imposed threat or impending threat. Either the relief is coming by way of a Queen of Pentacles who's a nurturer and who has some resources or can add some value to whatever tumultuous situation this might be, or he's actually feeling like he has to protect himself on some account of this Queen of Pentacles. But then we got the Temperance card here, which is the balance. The only cups on, well, no, actually, okay, so here's the 2 cups here behind him that he's not presently aware of, but then they show up here in Temperance being balanced by ethereal and angelic support. On account of having taken a rest, or at least just relenting to some rest and rejuvenation. So it just feels like a lot has incurred, honestly, that this character, but as I always see, it's on account of some action that he took with the 2 of Wands. And with the 10 of Wands, the disparity there is what, 8? 8 of Wands is, that's that looking back and being resentful of past actions, or, you know, like that wounded warrior energy where you've gone through a great deal. So that's the 8 there, and then the 7 still. So yeah, something has occurred that perhaps he's been trying to fight his way out of, and to it's depression. It's a mix between fighting his inner demons with depression on account of things that he submitted himself to or was in agreement with, and having some physical force set against him that's obviously not helping. That's why I was saying earlier, like, your mental and psychological can manifest into the physical. The physical is impending, you know, with great force with the 10 and the 7, but it's the 2 battles happening at once that is really causing this mental exhaustion. It's like having to fight your emotions and your energy, you know, having to fight in spirit and in truth is really laying him out to rest. So it's not as voluntarily as it is circumstantial, I would say. But I mean, it still can be, there's still a choice, because even if you're down to your last breath, you could still, you know, try to push yourself to the absolute limit, you know, whatever that may be. So I guess it's still a relenting that has to happen in order for the 4 of Swords to show up. There's some great heartbreak, that's what it is, that's occurred with these 3 of Swords hanging on the wall. That, yeah, he's definitely incurred a bit. I'm trying to see what though. I feel what I feels about this Queen of Pentacles, and usually my energy is not wrong. The only thing, like I said, that's like maybe the Temperance in this case is almost like this is just the justification and the balance of it all, you know, that for whatever he submitted himself to, this is just how it gets to play out, you know, which is how it happens, you know, even when we say, even I'm hearing repent in our mind, in my head, which is like just turning away from, which is example here, like repenting from some past experience or past course of actions, like literally turning away and doing something different or seeing things differently, stopping what you were doing, stopping how you were seeing yourself, life, circumstances, and embarking on a new path of understanding, awareness, action. It's a holistic shift and approach, you know. So that's kind of representative here with the Two of Wands, where he took some road before, and now perhaps he's made a turn around, or life has turned him around, but the burden has been, you know, it's been heavy to carry on this road. Yeah, let me get a few more. Let's see. This is interesting. All right, let's see what we got on. Let's just go card for card. Well, I'll see what comes out, but I'm going to line it up under so we could get some clarification. Okay, we saw how that came out. It's almost like what we say, like the struggle position. It's almost and this is 4 and the 5. 4 and the 1 is the 5 of Swords, which is some conflict. Yeah. So I'm going to turn it upright, but you see how it came out. It's almost equivalent to him being laid out up there. So it's, as I said, that what he's experiencing is on account of what he ultimately has invested in, or some course of action that he's taken. This is just the cause and effect, the balance of it all. You know, the universe creating harmony with ultimately what we have co-created for ourselves. And the Page of Swords, as we know, that's somebody who's in observance in the positive sense, but somebody that ultimately has been too focused on things outside of himself. We call it the stalker card, you know, and it's funny and ha ha he he sometimes, but you saw how it was kind of laid over. It was kind of laid to rest. So for whatever reason, he's either been laid out, and his ways of looking outside of himself have kind of been put to a halt. Maybe ways that he was over investing his energy into other people's business, or just looking everywhere outside of himself for the right thing to do, is what I'm hearing now under this Two of Wands, because this is about a plan, and it was kind of turned over where maybe perhaps he can't really see from the scope that he was looking through before, whereas he had all this inspiration, all this intel that he was using to ultimately fuel his plans of creativity in one way or another. Now there's some conflict with that, with the 1 and the 4 together, the 5 of Swords, where it's like win at all costs type of energy. Maybe that energy has kind of turned on him. Yeah, like how it was turned on his side. That conflict of which perhaps he used to operate in or be motivated by, that I don't care what the casualties are, I just want to win, that has ultimately become a detriment to his vitality. And perhaps whom he was garnering energy, is that the right word, garnering? I don't know. How he was gaining energy and intel before, that channel is closed in some way, shape, or form. So it kind of has put a halt or a shift in his plans as he had intended to progress forward, which is, let's see, probably partly why the cause for depression and despair with this five of Cups. Yeah, because this also implies with the 5 of Cups, like still looking back at spilled milk, you know, looking at your circumstances that have since passed, and instead of looking forward again, like how this Page of Swords is always looking back or looking outside of himself instead of being present with his own circumstances. He's looking at, I really want to go 1 for 1, but I'm gonna let it rock. He's looking at Yeah, he feels like he's missed some. This is like he's looking away from a potential healing opportunity. Oh, I see something here. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, we got them all on the board now. I might do one more row after this. But the star card is like following your north node. It's like healing, becoming whole, ultimately being intentional about connecting with what you feel is your destiny or your higher calling in life, the thing that is divine and designed for you to do, be, do, or have. And he's not really seeing that at this time. Number one, he's still struggling from the conflict that's been incurred, and he's still looking at things that have been lost. Instead of, I always see the Five of Cups as he's looking back at what's been lost, and the Three of Cups of which he's looking back at is like celebration. And in this case, I feel like it's even some debauchery. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I'm sensing it now. But it's like three ladies that are like toasting to whatever, you know what I mean? In its essence, it's actually not a negative card at all. But when he's looking back at those spilled cups that appear to almost be wine because it's red, okay, now it makes sense. Okay. So flow with me here. There was some way that he used to be able to garnish. I keep saying garnish or garner. I think it is garner, but I'm trying to stay away from saying siphon, but that really is the idea here. There was some way that he used to be able to siphon energy from that Three of Cups vibe, from either feminine energy or from either feminine force or just to energies that he identified as being vulnerable to his power or his prowess. He was able to, that's the spilled cups here, that for some reason that's been put to a halt. Remember I said the way he used to look outside of himself for some plan of action and creativity has been laid to rest and now is in conflict. He's in the conflict, and that's why he's laid out with really with the only recourse but to be in rest, rejuvenation, or recovery, either on account of the conflict that is turned back on him for those that have been disenfranchised on account of his siphoning, or mismanagement, or even, let's say, emotional manipulation, most practically, of energies that had high value, high quality, and he was ultimately exchanging his despair and depression for their vitality, if you can get with that. This is star energy again. Like, you can even see it looks like a feminine in the card if you can get into it. I won't get too close. I mean, I'm not monetized, so I can kind of do what I want. But these days, YouTube doesn't even like you to show the star card or like the devil card, because this is kind of like a naked body, which, to my point, there was some finessing going on of feminine energy, but it's more speaking to the vulnerability, whether or not it was actually physical. Perhaps, like I said in the beginning, there's a lot of wand energy. We started with the Two of Wands and some plan of action. You can even consider this like a plan of attack, where he's surveying the land and trying to decide how to conquer, with that small world in his hand. And it's all coming together now. So the depression, as I was feeling a little bit sorry for this character, and that's where this Queen of Pentacles comes in, because it's also a testament to how he was monopolizing on the vitality and value of women to fuel his cause, literally to even fuel his own vitality. And that's why the Temperance card is here, balancing out the scales for the ones that have been disenfranchised, maybe even unknowingly, because the Queen of Pentacles is a natural nurturer. She's willing to help, to serve, to support even. So it could have been financial finesse, but I feel like it was more so energetic and emotional finessing that was going on with the Star card, that he identified women that or let's say women, but it could have been men or women, because it doesn't have to be sexual. It could have been, but it's more so about those that he could have an advantage over in some regard, that he could more or less captivate in a vulnerable state, where the star here is naked. She's on a healing journey, or just very exposed, you know what I mean? Like in the star energy, that's someone that is very open to the expression of who she is or he is. They're not concealed in any way, so they almost are like a sitting duck for energy vampires, or don't even kind of even look like a vampire with the black cape on here. Wow. The downloads are flowing. So he's looking at how he's not been able to really gain, and the red in the cups, bam. Okay. So he's disappointed and depressed because he's not able to really gain that energy boost and resource and refuel that he used to be able to get from these high vibrational star seeds or energies that just emit some powerful light. You know, he was able to finesse that before, but now it's, for whatever reason, it's not so easy. For most of the reason, it's because spiritual and universal evolution has kind of cut these lower vibrational ambitions short, you know, where people had the opportunity, like I said before, to repent, to turn away from the things that they once had found prosperous or found some value in, and to do something new with this Two of Wands here. That was the invitation in spirit and in truth, to have a new plan of action on how to ultimately conquer the world, if that's what your ambition is. But for whatever reason, he continued to invest in those old tactics and aggressions, and it's now become spilled cups or spilled milk, because there's nothing he can do about the results that are occurring now. That's what crying over spilled milk is, you know. Agonizing over things that you can't change at this point. What's been done has been done. The energy's already been invested and expelled. And now it's on account of him ultimately choosing these two cups of whatever the spirit is dishing out at this temperance point here. For him, it may feel like a burden. I'm getting karma from the temperance vibration, even though that's not exactly what temperance is about. It's about creating balance and harmony. But like I said, sometimes the balance is the imbalance of those that have particularly been moving in the way of imbalance. You know what I mean? If you can understand what I'm saying, it's like the angel is here to bring a sense of equality and fairness to the playing field. But in order to do that, it's not just for those that have been vulnerable to the unfairness or things that have been unjustified. It's also on account of those, or even against those, that have caused the imbalance. So the temperance in itself may just be for him to finally, you know, where he didn't take the invitation before, perhaps the rest and rejuvenation and regeneration here, it is more or less been imposed or superimposed, I would even say, on account of experiences that he ultimately created for himself. But what it can do, in the highest vibration of him turning around and seeing the possibilities of these two cups behind him, is put an end to a burdensome cycle within himself that would have caused him to take this course of action or make this stance of offense in the first place, you know, to really turn that energy upside down. That's the higher octave of anyone that may be experiencing, you know, some adverse energy by way of karma right now, where it's like, it's clear that the misfortune and unfavorable experience that you're having is on account of ultimately what you've created. The hope to, you know, ascend beyond the burden that it may feel at this time is knowing that if you still have breath in your body, and the presence of spirit is still available to you and you're willing to receive it, it's an opportunity to just start fresh, not if you can more or less like move past what's been the energy that's been spilled or mismanaged at this point and actually choose the temperance, which would be the healing, the balance, the fairness that is even exhibited in the star, having that for yourself authentically and organically instead of siphoning it from other energies that are unaware or vulnerable, in some regard. It's like you can't have your cake and eat it too in that regard anymore, where you can have yours and someone else's. And again, like I said, with that Five of Swords, winning at all costs, like whatever it took to be vital, to be a star, perhaps it was even for fame and fortune or for some recognition or exaltation of sorts, that instead of him choosing to take a path that was integral and honorable, he chose a shortcut, or a diabolical route that may have infringed on other people's healing and wholeness in ways that it just isn't justified, or this outcome wouldn't be on the board at this time. It's time's up for being for narcissistic behavior, ultimately, where you really just care about nothing but yourself. It's only going to continue to, as I said here, sends you into cycles of burden and despair and this infinite loop of depression, ultimately, because if you're still trying to have things in that same old way, standing your ground amidst all of the objections and in the universe literally against that behavior, where with the Knight of Wands, it is very much so ambition by way of lust. And then the Emperor card is like an obsession with control, or even lack of control, I would say. One and the same, two opposite ends of the spectrum. Once again, another opportunity for balance and healing. That in this Emperor vibration here, this is him wanting to control, again, those forces outside of himself, not only just manipulating them for the vitality that the power that it could afford him in the position that it again exalted him to, but then lording some control over the advancement or exaltation of said energies that he was siphoning from in the first place, almost causing them burdens and being to be bound and blocked in some way, so that they couldn't ascend. Because if you can ascend to a certain level with even the potential of star power, it becomes very hard for you to be controlled or to be manipulated. Consider even the difference between stars that are bound by the industry, even contractually so, as in a standard sense. There is much more limitation as to how they can express themselves, what they can do. Definitely vibes here. I feel that with the Emperor card. They're bound by some restrictions or some expectation or ordinance of expression that they have to adhere to, or be regulated by. I guess I should say submit to, honestly, in order to maintain their status or whatever reward or return that they've had on account of their submission. Now I'm hearing it universally, in a sense, that this is, maybe even a breaking in the industry, in a sense, that has, I hear that, that has made money off of the imbalance of said stars, people that really hold the keys, that really, are the value of the business. There's balance happening for that in the ways that they've been disenfranchised, like this imbalance of power. So back to what I was saying, the difference between a star that's bound by the industry is there's much more limitation But it's like not the devil card here, it's the emperor, right? Because it's like societal standards and constraints and confines, but it's almost a disguise of sorts of a devil card, yeah, because see the burdens here, that's what you don't see that you're submitting yourself to. All you see is this opportunity to really do what you love, to express yourself, to create art, or share your talent or your gift or whatever the case may be. All the while you're connected to a source and a force that's really siphoning all that you have, and in the end leaving you with not much to show for it. Most stars don't make it out alive, you know what I mean, with everything, with their whole spirit intact and everything that they made in the midst of it. You know, there's usually some disparity there. Either you leave with hella burdens, you know, or even feeling like you have to protect yourself, or, you know, affirm yourself in some overly exerted way because of how you've been imbalanced and disenfranchised on the course of your pursuit of stardom or popularity or whatever the case may be, fame and fortune, or you're relinquished to the spirit of always lusting for that experience again, that fame, that position of you know, that as we say, fame is a drug, right? So it's like you're always lusting and doing. This is the energy of like always going above and beyond to acquire that sensation again, you know, that sensuality of what stardom brings. But what's blocked in between it is this emperor position here, where they're like the gateholders, or the gatekeepers, I should say, between those that would express themselves with no inhibitions, you know, free to do so, and with no, you know, without any regard to having to protect their vitality, and those that are bound to some limitation to do so. You do this to get that type of thing. And it's almost hard for you to gain your independence by way of your expression. This is like stability, independence. It's from a spiritual nature first, even though it's like I was saying, it's like he's going away from that. It's almost like you feel, even though she really is the Queen of Pentacles, the Nine of Pentacles is how it's being projected here, where you might have a little bit to show for your labor, but it's not the totality of what you're worth, you know. And so because you're at this point in time, at this position, you're faced with either just being happy with what you have, which is the best thing to do, being satisfied with however you fared in this game that society likes to play, and doing it on your own terms. Again, this is the independence, disconnected from any energetic source hoarder or siphoner or so-called investor or what's the right word, label or whatever, publisher. There's so many different facets when we're talking. I'm seeing it more as entertainment right now, but it could be in any regard. Someone that ultimately is presenting themselves to be the gatekeeper to your success and your stability and your creative expression, or, you know, just your satisfaction in life. This is someone that's satisfied in her own right. You know, she's made a living. Again, from a spiritual nature first, there's the satisfaction, and then the material essence of that is the mirror on the back end, you know, that as satisfied as she is and stable and secure as she is spiritually is the same as she is materially. But then you got the Moon card here, which is the things under the surface that have, you know, been hidden. And I feel like with the Temperance card, that's exactly what's being balanced, is these ways in which perhaps this is the expression of the one who has been done it independently, or even the one who thought they were, you know, who thought they were doing it on their own, or, you know, like I said, those stars that for the most part in the industry, not a lot of people get out unscathed. So this is like almost the balance that's happening energetically so and emotionally so for those that have been greatly impacted, perhaps not in ways that they could see financially, but psychologically, there we go, and mentally. It's like the great healing that's taken place, and that's what the balance is for, because so many people have been disenfranchised or dare I say even destroyed by just their simple, harmless, innocent pursuits of expression and creativity by way of the standards and confines that have been projected to be acceptable. So that's this Emperor card here. Like, it has to go through this way, you know? And now people are in everyday life, you know, beyond just this very micro scale world of fame and fortune and celebrity, I should say. People in everyday life are starting to learn that they don't have to adhere to these limitations, these burdens, these blockages, these incitements of lust and perverted passion that have been projected to them just to succeed and just to maintain, let alone to actually be prosperous in your own right, you know, secure in your own essence. They don't have to adhere to those confines anymore. You don't have to limit yourself to those restrictions. That's the great tug of war that's been at play here, because as people are awakening to that, it's been more of like I said here, like there's been an opportunity for the so-called powers that be to see the shift in universal order and to go with it, you know, to flow with that shift and that wave. Instead, they've been trying to find different ways to create new imbalances, new blockages, all for the purposes of maintaining this position and power over these energetic beings that prove to have great value. Obviously, they've already proven to be valuable in some regard by way of what it's afforded these individuals in power to build and gain on account of other people's energy. So it's already proven itself to be so, but now it's just like the obsession in a sense of wanting to maintain that control, not wanting to lose the grip over that commodity as people begin to be more independent, to begin to flourish more in their own right and regard outside of the system that has been constructed for it to do so. So as long as you're working within the confines of the system, the powers that are governing it have something to gain, because you'll always be subject to literally subject to do it that way. And through that way is how, even energetically and materially, the ones that are at the top of these structures are able to are ultimately able to gain value from it. You know, I'm having a hard time speaking, so I know, like, that's how I usually know something is real about this. Even considering like the strike, I think I saw a headline the other day that they were going back to the table to resume negotiations. Now, they've been on strike for a minute, the Hollywood strike, the writers and the actors. And, you know, it's definitely a detriment to us all that have been looking forward to our favorite TV shows to come back in the fall. But ultimately, what I think has happened, and I'll be interested to see how it plays out, is that I don't think they expected for people to hold their ground for as long as they have. Like, the idea was to pretty much starve them out, you know what I mean? So that they have no choice but to come back to the table humbly and take pretty much whatever we're willing to give, because they can't really support themselves. And then people, again, are starved for that fame and that success and that outlet, even if it's not like diabolically so, but this is people's way of lives now. This their way of living. So now when you create a void and you gatekeep that exchange, avenue, I'm trying to find another word, but I can't hear it. it causes great conflict, you know. But what I think they thought they were going to do is pressure the opposition to relent to that old regime. But what I think has actually happened is that more people have stood their ground and stood it for longer than what was anticipated, and now it's beginning to actually hurt the pockets of these executors and those, you know, again, as I said, these emperor positioned authorities that were in a position to gain, to ultimately live a life of exuberance and fortune off of the fortitude of others, really outside of what they even have to bring to the table themselves, because they're not writing, they're not acting, they're not, you know, doing all the things that ultimately create the art that is produced, you know, and that is the fortune of which it comes from. So they just had a lot to gain, again, off the backs of others, off the energy, literally siphoning the energy of others. I feel like they have come to a place where they've had to really look back, and instead, well, I don't know, we'll see how it plays out, but they're seeing themselves, you know, with this spilled milk energy here, so they might still try to play some hardball, perhaps. But I feel like ultimately, if the people, this is a great microcosmic example of how we could activate on a macro scale in Hollywood, of all places, you know. Go figure that they would be the prime example. But if the people can stay a united front here and really stand their ground for what they know they're worth and what they know they're due, the powers that be will have no recourse but to relent in some way, shape, or form. With all the hardball they intend to play, they have to recognize that their true source of vitality is coming from those that they're trying to oppress. So they will have to appease, literally balance what's been imbalanced under the surface, some of which none of us even really knew about, because we're just watching movies and watching TV and thinking that everybody's life in the spotlight is glamorous, not knowing that half of these people are not even being paid well. You know, they're barely able to support their families just for us to be entertained, you know. And I'm not advocating for Hollywood holistically, because I also feel like it's the balance of spiritual essence on a side note, on a higher note, for the disparity and disparity and I don't know, I'm looking for another word, but like some diabolical things that have been going on again under the surface in the first place, you know, that is all being balanced out, because it's on account of not just those that have created these experiences and this, you know, situation, but it's also on account to those that continue to contribute to it. So it's like, just as much as the system of those that are the powers that be are responsible for the law that they have laid down in the land, is still just as much on us if we continue to contribute to it. Again, micro, macro scale, considering there's an election coming up, you know, and there are going to be some major decisions to be made, more or less, about what powers that be you continue to support and submit to. How you are making that decision is really important, because it's ultimately creating the landscape in which you live and in which we all live. So again, that's the macro, but the micro scale, back to this Hollywood piece, is that if, as long as these actors, writers, and affiliates continue to hold their ground and stand firm on what they know they're due, there will be no choice but for there to be a balance, for their demands to be met in some regard. Now, side note again, what I think is actually going to happen, unfortunately, is that the balance of it all is going to be that the whole industry is going to take a bit of a plummet. First of all, on account of the fact that the strike made such a big impact on the production of new work, you know, on new projects and and things like that. Like there's literally nothing new on TV right now, and this is prime season for it to be so, unless it was already written or something like that. But for the most part, nothing new is popping on TV right now. So you're pretty much having to resort to watch Netflix or, you know, whatever streaming service you're into, or to go back into YouTube, where those more independent, here we go again, these independent channels or outlets of entertainment, you know, and that similar to how it happened during the pandemic. When things shut down, people turned to YouTube and other outlets such as that. And I feel like the industry executives or powers that be have actually bit off more, which is why there's more, this depression and this burden and stuff is here. But it's all in balance, as I said, because I feel like they bit off more than they can chew, thinking that they could starve the opposition to their knees. Now, not only are their personal lives suffering because there's nothing new being produced, but it's also putting them behind it's like regressing the industry and the business for new production and giving way for more independent stars to shine. You know, to the point where people might actually forget about their TV shows, like, oh, okay, whatever. I'm here on YouTube or whatever the hell else you watch, you know, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you can see something out of the box, you know what I mean? And people might actually find more value in that, as they already have been anyway, but there might be more of an engagement in that than there will ever be again in these bigger industry outlets. So it's like what they thought they were doing in greed and, again, siphoning the energy, being unfair, not creating balance where they knew that there was room to do so. They actually played themselves, you know, so congratulations in some regard. But like I said, it's just the balance of what's been happening dark and deep under the surface that's been unjustified in the first place, which is why I was hearing karma. And when I was saying, like, I feel karma, like something is karmic about this. But so although is mainly, and remember I was saying, like, it's like those that have been disenfranchised, i.e. those on strike and those that are in opposition to the system as it's been upheld, there's being some balance happening there. The strike is really most effective to those that had the most to gain on account of those individuals. But in a sense, it kind of like puts them at odds too, because if the business is not generating productivity the way that it used to, that means there's less opportunities as well in that regard. So it just shrinks everything down to size, if you feel what I'm saying. Now, with those, again, I still feel like it's a justifiable experience because people been knowing that Hollywood was corrupt and things were unfair. And on account of almost selling your soul to be a part of it, even in the most simplistic way, like the practical way, just taking less than what you're due or what you're worth just for the sake of being a part, there has to be a reckoning for that, you know, which is awesome that people are standing up for it now, but it's been imbalanced. So even those that are justifiably in opposition are still set to be a bit bruised by the outcome, like, you know, burdened in a sense by the outcome in a way, you know, having to almost stand their ground on some new objective or pursuit of passion. This is what that is in the upright, a passionate pursuit or advancement towards something in this regard, and expressing yourself and creating a stable life by way of what you love to do. It shifts the scale in that regard too, so that it's almost like it is a freeing, like I was saying before, it's like double-handed, which is why the temperance card is here. Because yeah, you're free perhaps to do something more than what you were contractually bound to do, but then you actually have to do something more independently. You know, it's like you can't just depend on the system that used to feed you anymore. You actually have to do it for yourself or do it differently than you did before. For those that have been disenfranchised and their temperance, their balance, their karma looks different. You know, they know who they are, they know what they've done, what they've created, and they'll have to answer to that accordingly. So for some, it may actually mean, you know, a lot of people are depressed because they don't know how they're going to maintain these lavish lifestyles, you know, that they've been earning on the backs of stars, you know. So there's that. But like I said, everything in balance, ultimately. This is really interesting. I didn't expect for it to take this turn. Like I said, I've been using it very much so in the aspect of Hollywood, because that's a present example right now, and it actually is reflective from a micro scale to a macro situation that we all have to encounter, even by way of, like I said, the presidential election. But ultimately, it's speaking to the inevitable balance that's occurring even in our personal lives. You know, where you may have even been disenfranchised, specifically or intimately so, in a way that you can, you know, personally identify with, not just outside projection. Looking in to another situation, like you yourself have been disenfranchised or have felt in opposition to your greatest potential or growth in whatever regard that is. The same is true. It's like there's some ways in which we've contributed to that force. We've been in agreement with it. We've signed up for it. We've signed a dotted line. We've said, you know, this is what I'm agreeing to in order to survive in one way, shape, or form. The balance is here, like liberating all things. The temperance is here. This angel here is literally liberating all things. Everything, the seen and unseen, is coming to the surface so that nobody can say they don't know. Nobody can say they don't have the intel, they didn't understand, they didn't know what they were signing up for. Everything that you didn't know is now being exposed more and more day to day, right? We see that in every day in every way, in social media even. So it's like we're having all the intel and the assurance of who we are, of our potential power and prosperity. Now, the flip side of that is that once you know, you can't not know. You know what I mean? Like once you know what you're capable of, what you're worthy of, what you are, what's possible for you to do in your own right and regard, there's really no going backwards on that intel and that assurance, unless, like I said, you're going back into the system that disenfranchised you in the first place. It's really like, would you sell your soul for the sake of comfort and security, or would you step out in the faith and perhaps even uncertainty? With the moon card here, it's obscure. You don't always know what's going bump in the night. But one thing that you know, one thing that you can submit yourself to is that everything is working for your good with this temperance card. So perhaps in a practical sense, there are those of us that are stepping out into new territory, new expressions of ourselves more independently. You may be starting a new job. You may be compelled to leave the security of a position or a place that once felt very safe and sound to experience yourself in a new environment that you feel has a greater promise, or that you just feel liberated to do so. You literally are free to move about the planet in whatever way you choose to do so. With great reward, what's the word? With great power comes great responsibility. Is that it? One of those. I've said this before, but for some reason I'm finding a hard time finding the exact term. Expression. But ultimately, you have all the power, all the resource, all of the potential to create your own path, literally to do whatever you choose to do. That's not only going to bring you spiritual satisfaction and security, but material and physical satisfaction and security and stability. The challenge is continuing to stay balanced, to believe that you can maintain that position of power. That's not always easy for those that have been subjected to a higher source and submitting, let alone objectified by a higher power. It's much easier said than done, but it's most certainly is possible. You know, if it wasn't possible, the invitation and the prospect of it all wouldn't even be here today, as to why I'm even talking about this, because it certainly wasn't on my mind, and definitely not in this regard, which is why it's been kind of like a tug of war in my expression today. But anyway, that's what I'm feeling for this message. So I hope that you felt some vibration of truth in it, that you're empowered to be sovereign in spirit and in truth, you know, to really create your own experience of life now. And you do have angelic and spiritual and intangible support to do so. It's almost like divine for us to be walking on that path. That's the temperance here. Back to what I was saying, it's like it seemed unfortunate for it to happen by way of the strike, but if the spirit will liberate however it sees fit to do so. And sometimes both sides or all sides have been infringed upon for the liberation to take place in the way that's going to be most forwarding for the greatest good of all. So perhaps you may, perfect example, back to this idea of stability and security. You may be liberated by way of actually losing your job, that job that you've grown to depend on, maybe even made hella money, and you know, or a position of sorts of power where you felt secure, you felt like you might even be there for the rest of your life. That seems like an infringement on your stability, certainly on your sanity, right? That'll send you into prayer meditation real quick. You may feel that way, but ultimately it's the spirit liberating your energy to do what you're most divine to do in an independent sense at your highest vibration, perhaps what's been suppressed under the surface all along by way of your emotional self, like your true heart's desire, what really infuses you to be passionate in life by way of this Knight of Wands, what really incites you with passion to move ahead, to express yourself unapologetically and without inhibition. It could be that the job was that gatekeeper to keeping you from doing so. So although it might initially seem like an imposition to your security, it ultimately is liberation, because now you have nothing but time and but the power of choice to actually express yourself and experience life in the way that you ultimately would want to do in your most holistic form, in that star quality of you. And again, it doesn't have to be about fame, fortune, or even celebrity. It's about feeling whole and complete and doing the thing that you feel most guided to do, following that North Star or North Node of your birth chart, of your life, your life's journey, what's calling you to higher and greater for the most expansive and fulfilling experience and quality of life, not the quantity, you know, not the bank account, not the material gain, although that may come with it, you know, but it's ultimately spirit answering to the desires of your heart at its depths here with the Moon card, and ultimately opening the pathway for you to embark upon that journey. And just be encouraged that it's a safe one. It's safe and sound no matter how scary it may seem. And when you got the Temperance angel here, that literally means that all things, even the things that don't look too great at this time, like what is happening right now, is all working for your good and for the highest good of all of you. All right. So I'm gonna leave that up. And look, the High Priestess. I'm gonna leave that there. I was going to do another row, but I'm not. The High Priestess, again, that's being in connection to, that's being in divine alignment. Simply put, you know, that's being in divine alignment, answering to that call of spiritual wholeness. That sometimes, as I like to say with the High Priestess, sometimes the decisions you make on account of answering that call aren't most conventional. they aren't most societally acceptable. They often maybe look a little funny, a little crazy. Maybe, like I said, you either lost your job or you quit your job and you're being called to move clear across the world. That may not look too great for those in your life, perhaps, with the Six of Cups card, that have a connection to you as you were, or even you as you are, and are looking like, why would you do that? Why would you, they have an invested interest in your energy in some way, shape, or form, good, bad, or indifferent, because everybody that has a that you have a nostalgic attachment to isn't necessarily good or bad for you. Some of those that even mean the best for you can ultimately be an obstruction to your divine path, just on account of projection and more or less, impressing upon you what they believe that the highest good of you is, or what it should be for you. Consider, for some reason I'm hearing, get thee behind me, Satan, in the scriptures where Jesus says that to Peter, because Peter is pretty much telling him what his fate should. He's objecting to the fate of what Jesus knows is to be, on his way to the cross. Now, this is in story context, so you don't have to believe that. Just receive that this is what the story says, that his one of his best friends of the disciples, the closest one to him, that loved him dearly, was an objection to what ultimately was Jesus's path, his fate, his destiny. It didn't suit his need to want to have Jesus by his side, eternally, that safety and security that he had come to depend on, and Jesus's energy and vitality. So he couldn't fathom the idea of being in separation. Like, what? What do you mean you're not going to be here? No way. He was resistant against that. That doesn't mean that Peter was a demon. It doesn't mean that he didn't mean Jesus any well. It just means that Peter was looking out for Peter, as we as humans do. We're looking out for our own vitality and security and safety. No harm or foul there for the most part. The harm or the foul is when you're out of alignment of what is divine to you and determined for your path exclusively and uniquely on account of trying to appease those outside of you that either may be dependent on you or have an expectation otherwise. That's the harm and the foul to yourself. When you start to actually regress back into this space of codependency on account of being afraid to separate yourself from the ideal of security and stability, not trusting the spiritual nature of the divine essence of you. This is even answering to a higher calling of you in a sense that is beyond what is tangible, knowing that you're safe and sound on that pursuit and on that walk, because you've established that alignment here in your natural body and your physical self. This is spirit and mind. This is mind, body, spirit alignment with the high priestess here. If you have surrendered to that and submitted yourself to that, that's really the only path worth committing to. It doesn't matter what society projects as success or security. It doesn't matter what your folks, your parents, your friends project to you as the safe and sound bet, the sure shot. It only matters what you identify to be the most prosperous path. And if you resist the invitation to take that path, that's ultimately equivalent to you, in essence, selling your soul. And nobody wants to be in that position with yourself, let alone with your highest self, where there was a path, consider the road less traveled, that was wide open for you, saying, hey, over here, come this way. But you decided to go the way everyone else went, the way everyone else goes, and ultimately missed out on living the life of your dreams on account. That's a real sad existence to live out, if I do say so myself. I'd rather be alone on that path to fame and fortune and stardom and celebrity in the celestials, literally by way of celestial standards, than anything that this world could project to me, whether it be intimately so or generally so. There's no confines that I'll be willing to commit to in exchange for my soul and for the exuberance of my star essence as it's been ordained from the Most High Source. And I pray the same is true for you. That is the way. That is the truth. That is the light. All right? It is so, and so it is. Thank you for listening. Until next time, I leave you with peace.